Okay, this is turn 10, and it is the last turn that we have an opportunity to put a blockade in place. So that's going to be a key focus for the turn. It's also probably in this game the last turn I'm going to have to make a decision about an A-bomb victory. And the reason I say that is because having been down or being down 4 ASPs due to war in Europe, I don't really have enough ASPs, I don't think, to pursue both a cleanup strategy towards an A-bomb victory and an invasion of Japan simultaneously in turns 11 and 12. Not sure I would have enough ground resources to do that either, but ASPs are probably the biggest constraint for that. So what that means is if the two cards, that is Tojo resigns and Soviets invade Manchuria, both happen to come out this turn, and they would obviously at the end of the turn, then maybe I can go for an A-bomb victory, which would require taking the resource hexes. But if that doesn't happen, I'm going to have to probably commit to an invasion of Japan next turn, given my ASP situation. Let's take a quick look at reinforcements. Over in the CBI, the rest of the British fleet has come on, although if you've been following along, you know that India is in revolt, and my strategy basically at this point has been totally focused on the Pacific in an effort to try to win the game over here. And so whether that's going to make any impact on the game or not is questionable, but at least they're on as reinforcements. And then this is the remainder of the Allied reinforcements in the U.S. theater, and so we've got an extra CV, we've got the battlecruiser that comes on. Central Pacific, you'll remember I pulled it off the board at the end of last turn. I brought it back in on at BIAC, which means it's got a range that'll go just about anywhere on the board at this point, so that's kind of nice. And then you can see I've got a few other, so the second bombardment group of B-29s has come on. I've got another Marine division. This guy's just plugging. You can see there was a little bit of a ZOI hole there that he's plugging, and a couple of CVEs and whatnot. So ultimately, these are the forces that I'm going to have to go to the end of the game with. If you look at what Antero did here, he's got basically a couple of reinforcements and I think a replacement step that went to Saipan here. So he's now down to 4 China divisions because he did put a replacement step there. He used one of his naval replacements to bring the Junyo on over there. So as I said, this is definitely the turn in which we're going to make or break the blockade. And so let's just take a quick look. As we ended last turn, things did not look particularly good on the blockade front. I think I mentioned there were something like 18 steps remaining, and we're probably up to 19 at this point with the replacement. So there's a lot of stuff to try and take out by way of getting a blockade in place. But the key point here is that it really doesn't make too much difference whether you're going for a blockade or an invasion or an A-bomb victory. Any way you look at it, you need to take out Japanese ZOIs and you need to take out their reaction stacks, which means taking out their naval. So we're going to have to continue to focus on that this turn and see what we can do about it. Just taking a quick refresher on the track. We're basically at +4 for political will here. We actually lost one last turn. No, sorry, we didn't. We're probably going to lose one this turn for not making progressive war. We did make progressive war last turn. We took Eniwetok, which gave us all of the marshals. But at this point, there's no more easy pickings from a progressive war perspective. And so that means we either have to divert activations from trying to take out his heir to making progressive war, or we just ignore progressive war. And because we've got 2 bombers in, they're both full strength, so we're likely to get we're 99% likely to get a bomb hit each turn here to the end. We don't really worry about this because the bomb hit 1 or 2 is going to keep pushing this up 1 a turn. So if we lose 1 for failure to make progressive war, we make it up on bombers and we're okay. So that's one of the nice things about the last 3 turns is you really don't need to worry too much about progressive war because it's actually coming through your strategic bombing. If we come down, we had subs hit again, so he's down to 1 ASP, so that means he can react to exactly one amphibious assault in the turn, and that's it. That's always nice. I'm up to 6. Doesn't seem big for this point in the game, but it's nice to know that I've got that after things moving fairly slowly on that front for a while. And although I don't think I'm going to use that many this turn, but when we come down to the end of the game and have to invade Japan, it's going to be really tight. So that'll be interesting to see. With 2 bomber hits and 1 sub hit, he's down now to 4 cards. So I've got 6 because you'll remember I lost 1. I'm losing 1 a turn for India being in revolt. So I've got 6 plus a pass. He's got 4 and 2 passes, and it's important to remember that you can never have more than 2 passes. So if the Japanese are at 5 cards, they get 2 passes, but when they drop to 4 cards, they still only get 2 passes. This is really critical for the Allies at the end of the game, because what it means is if your strategic bombing is on schedule, then in turns 10, 11, and 12, you should be getting normally 2 bomber hits, which will take 2 cards, and you'll be getting a sub hit because that's an auto hit at this point in the game. So that should be 3 cards each turn that the Japanese is losing on 10, 11, and 12. And what that means is even if you're at 7, that's great. Even if you're at 6 plus a pass like I am here, because you've got that pass in there that you can spend early, what's going to happen is you'll be playing first as the Allies, and you'll also get to play last. And playing last, knowing that the Japanese are out of cards, is really important for doing surprise and other nasty stuff towards the end of the game. So this is definitely a good thing. Let's take a quick look at the cards that I drew, because I actually did, and before we pull that hand out, come over and, come on, let's pull that up there. There you go. So I have Operation Toenails as my FO card. That's just a nice basic event that gives me a +1 in a ground attack if I can get one going this turn. And then for a draw this turn, I actually have a pretty good hand. Doolittle Raid, this is worth Political Will. I don't need the Political Will at this point, so I'm going to absolutely use that as a 3OC. Matador, I don't need it as a reaction card, so that's going to be a 2OC. In fact, ultimately, that'll be the card I think that goes into FO probably, just because it's, these are both 2OCs. I'm going to use one of them to run an offensive, and I'm going to put the other one, probably this one, into FO, just because I really want to use these 3 events to try and close out a blockade this turn. And these are all decent events. So starting with Obo over here, it's any HQ logistics value of 5, only Australian ground units, but that doesn't really matter because what I'm trying to do here is do as much damage as I can using my Navy. So I can use that on Central Pacific for a total of 8 naval units activated. Over here I can use this. This is a 5 for Southwest, so it's worth either 7 with Southwest or 6 with Central. So again, that's great for going after just about anything, and I can activate any ground units I want, so that's a possible amphibious assault type of event card if I get there. And then Watchtower is really nice. This is a surprise attack, any HQ logistics value of 5, and as with surprise attacks, this has a maximum of 1 ground unit, but if I'm using it to do damage, particularly this is a card I probably want to save until the end of the turn. If I use it as my last play when he's out of cards, then it's a guaranteed surprise attack because he won't be able to play any reaction card. So I go ahead and use my pass first because I want to just get that out of the way. He uses his first of 2 passes as well, so it's back to me for the first actual card play. And what I want to do is I want to use my 2. Remember I said I'm going to put one of my 2OC cards into the FO at some point. So I've got a 2OC and a 3OC that I want to use for offensives. And I'm going to get those out of the way first before I use, remember I've got actually 4 event cards because I've got Toenails in the FO queue plus Oboe, Dexterity, and Watchtower. So I want to get these 2 out of the way first. And what I do with the OC cards is I go after his bigger stacks. So you'll notice most of his stacks at this point have 1 step of air or naval. These are all 1-step stacks here, right? He's got actually 2 steps at Tokyo. He's got 3 steps here at Tainan, and he's got a couple of steps there, but that's it. Almost everybody else is a single step. So what I'm doing is I'm using, because the OC cards only allow me 1 battle hex, and I can therefore concentrate. I'm going to go after the bigger stack. So this is the first one that's got 3 steps here. I pull out basically 5 CVs. And in this particular one, again, it's a case where he's not able to react. He misses intel. It's a surprise. but it wouldn't really matter because he's not, I've got so much firepower here that he's not going to throw more forces into that. There's really no point for him. So what ends up happening is that these guys go to the dead pool, and that is 3 steps down. It's the beginnings of a hole in his ZOI screen, and it also takes out one of his naval reaction stacks at this point. After my attack on Tainan, Antero uses his second pass to get that out of the way, and so I go ahead and I'm going to play Doolittle as a 3-0C on Central. So that's going to give me 6 activations, and I want to go after his stack here at Tokyo. Again, it's a reaction stack, and there's actually 2 steps there, so I've got a better shot at killing more stuff. And again, he actually does miss on intel here. It's surprise again. But even had he made it, I think with this amount of firepower, it's unlikely that he would have done anything in reaction here. So these guys, because they're yellow dot units, as you can see, those go, they're delete up, not the ground, rather the Akagi there. They are not in the dead pool anymore. They just go away permanently. So that's my second operation there. And for his next operation, he goes ahead and plays Kondo. Vice Admiral Kondo would have been nice to have early in the game for him, but also works halfway decently here as well. As you can see, these are all the units that he's moved, and what essentially what he's done is he's taken forces from places like down here where he had a couple of full-strength ground units and pulled them back to Japan. He's pulled stuff from other places, Rangoon, Truk. He had this guy hanging out. By the way, I think I mentioned at one point that we had left the guy in Truk, that when South Seas came off the map, that Truk became out of supply. One of the things that you may not have noticed is that when South Seas comes back on the map, there we go, that Truk actually is back in supply. So that was kind of why we decided to leave it there. We said, well, we missed it, but with South Seas back on the map, Truk's actually in supply, so we just left that guy there. As you can see, he's got some gaps in his ZOI here, but I don't have anything blocking his movement really, so at this point, he's still in a position where he's able to pull as much stuff back from the front as possible. You saw that I don't have the Soviets invade Manchuria card in my hand, so even if he plays Tojo, I'm not going to know this turn whether I'm able to implement an A-bomb victory or not. But the fact that he's pulling a lot of folks back here, possible I could interpret that as he doesn't have Tojo in his hand, and so he's started to be a lot less worried about an A-bomb victory. But he is still backfilling here, so he's not completely giving up these resource hexes yet. So in any event, this is the beginning of what looks like a general withdrawal to come back and defend Japan here. Having got my OC plays out of the way there, it's time to start spending event cards. And so here I'm going to use Oboe, which gives me 5. I can play it on Central. That'll give me a total of 8. I can only activate Australian ground, but that doesn't really matter because I'm not activating any ground here. So I play that as the event on Central Pacific for 8. I activate guys in this general area, and here's sort of the attacks that go forward. And you'll notice here I'm focusing my attacks in this direction, and part of the reason for that is that he's still got a lot of kamikazes that I'm not seeing come out. I keep thinking there's going to be some somewhere, and I'd really rather not go and attack single air units up here that could turn out to be a kamikaze, and so he basically gets a freebie out of it in the sense that he uses a unit that was going to die anyway to generate 2 hits against me. It's harder for him to do that down here. These guys are not within range. A couple of these guys are. But I'm definitely feeling a little nervous about kamikazes and mostly just trying to be as efficient as possible in terms of generating the maximum damage against him for the minimum possible casualties against me. Anyway, you'll see his reaction here is kind of interesting. He is able to react, and what he does is he actually activates 3 of the units that are here in the Dutch East Indies, and his goal, because in all these cases, I'm relying on getting a 1x result to kill the unit. And in fact, down here, a 1x result will only flip it. In the other situations, basically a 1x result would kill the unit. But I still have a 30% chance of getting a 0.5x result. And so what he's hoping for is that some of these units might be able to get away. If I miss on some of them, they'll actually be able to react and head home. So this reaction move is really preparation to use reaction to withdraw these guys from the DEI and bring them back to the home front for defense. Just walking through the results quickly, was mixed with a number of low rolls on my side. Here we rolled low and just flipped this guy. Here we did fine and hit this guy. We also hit this guy, so both of those guys died. We did okay here as well. We flipped him. Here actually Hancock took a critical hit. That's why Hancock is flipped. We were okay. We hit here at Davao, but we missed both at Manila and at Tarakan. And so then this guy down here is able to PBM back up here to close that ZOI gap. At this point, Antero plays another OC just to bring these two units back from the CBI. So you'll remember that Congo was actually over defending Dhaka, and the Air Division, that's 4th Air Division, was over at Rangoon. So he's pretty much completely abandoned his front line and the resource hexes there. So I'm starting to think that it's highly likely that he does not have Tojo in his hand at this point, that he's not really worried about an A-bomb victory. And that just kind of reinforces my conviction that I'm probably going to have to either finalize the blockade here, which again is, we've made some progress, but we still have a long ways to go. And if we fail that, then we're going to have to invade Japan. Here I'm pulling toenails out of FO. I'm actually not using it to attack anything on the ground. This is just more attempt to take out his air-naval steps. And if you look at what I'm doing here, we're going against Kaio here at Saipan. We're going against Nagato at Osaka. We're going against Taiyo at Okinawa. And we're going against Kongo at Tainan. And those are both his last 4 naval steps that are on the board at this point, and also those are 4 reaction stacks. So you might wonder why I'm not more focused on ZOIs, given how much I've emphasized that. In fact, I've got a plan that you'll see shortly to do some invasion. It's uncontested invasion, so I'm not worried about a ground die roll bonus here. But I've got a plan to do some invasion, and the most effective thing I can do to prep for that invasion is to try to take out his reaction stacks. And so if I'm successful here, that's what I'm going for, is his last 4 naval steps and all of his ability to do any kind of amphibious assault reaction at this point. Antero has more bad luck. This is one of the things that sort of plagued him this turn, is that he has missed on a number of intel rolls. So I end up with surprise again. And so all these guys are actually going away. So that's Nagato that I finally get rid of. And you'll notice actually I doubled up on these guys because I really, in fact, ultimately it's possible that he could have reacted, but it really wouldn't have made a difference here, in the sense that he doesn't have any 2-step units left that could take a casualty in exchange for one of these guys. And so because I doubled up, even on a half-times result, I can kill each of those. Well, the only place I didn't was at Saipan here. Every place else I doubled up and could have killed somebody on a half-times result with no surprise. So we really would have ended up the same place, even if even if he had rolled and been able to react. After I take out his reaction stacks, his next play is another OC to activate more units to sort of recover position. So, for example, the 51st Air Force comes from Palau up to Saipan here. The 4th Air Division just moves from Taihoku over to Okinawa. These guys are coming from Tarakan all the way up to Seoul. And the 1st SN pulls back from Tainan to defend Pusan. And if you were looking carefully, you might have noticed at the beginning of the turn, Pusan was actually not under a ZOI at all. And so I could have grabbed Pusan for free there. The reason I didn't, and I have my eye on Pusan as a base to help establish blockade, but the reason I couldn't really go for it earlier in the turn is that with all of his ZOIs down here blocking, if I have a CV here, I can trace out this way, okay, as long as he doesn't have an air unit further northeast in Japan than what he's got right now. But even that is too long a haul all the way down to Central Pacific. It's more than 20. I think it's actually 26 hexes. So that raises an interesting question of whether BIAC was the best positioning for Central Pacific here. Maybe something like sticking it out here in Kavieng or possibly putting it at Eniwetok would have been a better move. But in any event, it is where it is. It's in BIAC, and so I couldn't really go for a grab at Pusan at that point. But you'll see shortly that it's about time probably to start thinking about making that grab. Here I go ahead and play to FO. I think I mentioned before the plan is to play Operation Matador. Since I think I still have some chance of actually implementing a blockade this turn, I'm going for my two good events to try and do that. So Matador goes into the FO. At that point, he's got two cards left, one in the FO and one not. He plays a code change out of the FO. He basically just discards it. So that's sort of an interesting signal that the card that he's got in his hand is, well, he either wants to put it into FO or it's worth more to him than a code change, and maybe both. And so now at this point, I've got two cards left. He's got one card left. And here is where I end up spending quite a lot of time trying to figure out how to make the best use of the cards that I've got. So for this next operation, you'll recall that I mentioned early on that I want to save my surprise attack till the very end. And so that means I want to use Operation Dexterity here. And the main concern I have is the fact that he really discarded the code change from FO, suggesting that the card he's got in his hand is worth more to him defensively than a code change card. I know that he's got a weather card still yet to be drawn. He has not had any deck reshuffles, and so he's down to not that many cards. So he had, I think, around a 25 or 30% chance of drawing the weather card this turn. And the fact that he signaled he's got something worthwhile in hand by discarding the code change from FO suggests that that could very well be the weather card. And so it would be really bad news if I wasted Watchtower only to have it weathered. I really don't want to have Dexterity weathered either, but better to have Dexterity weathered. So at this point I'm playing Dexterity. It's NEHQ 5 if on Southwest, and so we go ahead and play that as the event. And what I end up doing with it is actually making a couple of amphibious assaults here. And you'll see this will give you a little more sense of how I'm going about trying to put a blockade in place. What I've done is I've got one Marine Brigade that's going after Apari with support from Essex and Bunker Hill. And then I've got, and there's no amphibious assault reaction possible on that one because, again, he has no naval reaction stacks. And so I don't have to worry about any ground forces getting in there. That's why I can get away with just using the 8-8. I obviously do have to worry about possible air-naval reaction, but that's relatively minimal given the forces that he's got on the board at this point. All of his big units are in the dead pool, and what he's got left are only one-step units. So I'm pretty good here. And then up here, I'm going in with the Marine Division. The reason I'm hitting Tainan with New York here is to pin it. If I get rid of my ZOIs, you can see that he's still got solid ZOI all the way through. So he could activate this unit and march it over land to fight here. And I really don't want that to happen. So I'm pinning the only possible ground reaction force here at Tainan. And then again, I'm supporting the landing with a couple of carriers. And as it turns out, he does have the weather card. He goes ahead and plays the weather card here because he knows that it's bad news if I'm able to do this. And what I want to do is actually show you what it would have looked like if I had been successful here, and so why it was so important for him to weather this. This position assumes that he doesn't weather my Operation Dexterity, that my Marines land on Luzon and over here on Taiwan. And then this is a look at what I could do with Operation Watchtower as a follow-on. So with Watchtower, I'm going to have, it's 5 plus 3 on Central Pacific, so I'm going to have a total of 8 activations. So let's assume, first of all, that I send CVs after 4 air units for 4 activations. So that gets that guy, and because I'm surprised, I'm plus 3 for surprise, plus 3 for 1944 and later. And so those guys are auto kill. And then let's further assume that with the ZOIs that are in place to make those attacks, I have a path that the Marines can trace to Busan, which they certainly could have. And I'm also going to send in the Essex, and I can use the Essex to help create that path as well from this spot. Well, it won't matter because the Essex can be pretty much anywhere within range, because what the Essex will do is it'll be auto kill for 1 step on that guy, and then the Marines will auto kill the 2nd step, and so that guy's gone. And then this guy ends up here, and so that's remember, I did 4 carriers to kill off 4 of his air units. These 2 are now 6 activations, and my other 2 activations, let's say I move these guys up here initially, and then in PBM, one of those guys goes there, and one of those guys goes there. So that's 8 activations, so I've used Watchtower to the max. And let's look carefully, because now that's a successful blockade. And let's talk about why that's a successful blockade. You'll notice he's got several ZOIs left on the map, but what matters is that was the last card play of the turn. He has no way at this point to move those guys. So now we go to the national status segment and we check. There's no way to trace across ocean here because I've got an uncontested ZOI. So he can't trace into my ZOI area here, which means he can't get into Seoul. And we're counting this as if it were an HQ supply trace, right? So when you're doing blockade, you trace from this home city in Japan to a resource hex using the supply line trace rules that you would use if you were tracing to an HQ. So that means you can go in and out of ports as many times as you want. You can go over land as far as you want, but you still can't, for example, go inland at a point that's not a port. So you can't trace up here and go here and march down over land. You have to trace somehow into one of these ports, but there's no way to get to any of these ports over here because I've got it blocked. So the only place that they can trace out of is back here, and if they trace down into here, the problem is they can't get to any resource hexes down here because I've got this all blocked off. And if they trace down this way, they can't get to any resource hexes this way because I've got everything down here blocked off, and Australia actually can't get to Australia because I've got ZOIs down there too. So even with 3 ZOIs left on the map, I carefully killed off the ZOIs that were going to make a difference from a blockade perspective, leaving only 3 that can't influence the blockade. They could, in the next turn, move potentially to influence the blockade, but the point is if I can put the blockade in place at the end of this turn, then I've got all of next turn to kill off any ZOIs that he's got that might interfere, because you only check the blockade at the end of the turn. You don't worry about whether the blockade is in place during the turn. It doesn't have to be there moment to moment during card play during the turn. So this would have resulted in a blockade victory if he had not had the weather card and played it at that particular point in time. He does, however, have the weather card. He plays it at just the right moment. It spoils my opportunity for a blockade, but it's well done. It was right down to the wire there, and I certainly had no expectation at the beginning of the turn that I had any chance for putting a blockade in place, but I think what that shows you is the power of some good cards, particularly a surprise card, but the other 2 military events that I drew that turn were also solid military events. So with the 4th one that I had, Toenails in the foe, that was 4 good military events, including a surprise. And so that really was what gave me the opportunity to have any chance to pull off a blockade there. This is the actual situation. Having had the 2 invasions weathered, everybody went home. And so what I'm doing here with Watchtower, I haven't put all the units forward, but I'm activating 8 units, 6 CVs that aren't showing here, plus these 2 units up here that are showing as activated. So the 6 CVs that I'm not showing as activated are just going to go to within range of the 6 Japanese air units that I've indicated here, because it's a surprise attack and there's nothing he can do about it, all of those air units are going to the dead pool automatically. Well, this guy is out of the game. So essentially, I've taken all of his ZOIs except these couple off the map here, and Shangri-La is going to PBM to that location. These guys again die the same way. Basically, the Shangri-La takes the first hit on them, and the Marines take the second, so they go away. So Pusan is now controlled by me, and I've now locked out any ability for him to trace to any of these units here other than through Iwo Jima. So you can see he can't trace out over sea this way. He can trace over land to a port, and then he can trace out, well, let's say he goes to Nagoya here, he can trace directly south from Nagoya through these and then off to reach any of these guys here. So he does have supply and activation traces still available, but they're totally dependent on Iwo Jima. And so that's one of the things I'm going to need to look at next turn, is closing that down, because I'd like to prevent any other units from getting back to Japan at this point to help in the defense if I can. So the end of turn 10, that's where we finish up. We just by a weather card, we fail to implement a blockade. That means, given that also Tojo resigns did not come out, I'm definitely not going to be able to go for an A-bomb victory here. I'm going to have to plan on the invasion of Japan, and so we'll get a chance to take a look at how that goes over the next 2 turns.